Welcome to a brand new episode of Common Sense, a podcast where we look at how and why we can protect our collective urban commons like lakes, wetlands, neighborhood parks, community gardens, and playgrounds. We seek to understand how and why people are working to protect and conserve our commons. In today's episode, we are here at Jakkur Lake with Dr. Annapurna Kamath, who heads the JalPoshan, the organization which is managing Jakkur Lake with us. And she'll be speaking to us about how to involve community, what is the role of communities, and how we can work with them to ensure the management of lakes with an example of Jakkur. So welcome, ma'am. Thank you for joining us on this episode on Common Sense, where we speak of how to manage our collective commons, especially in a city like Bangalore. My main question would be, my first question to you would be, maybe can you give us a brief over, because Jakkur has been a lake that has been well documented, well researched over the last 10-15 years in Bangalore as one of the most successful case studies. So can you maybe give us an introduction of how you started off working with Jakkur? What is your motivation? What was your motivation? And what keeps you inspired even to this day to continue working with Jakkur Lake?
Namaste, Arvind. It's a pleasure to be on this podcast today. I represent JalPoshan, a citizen group, and this started, in 2014. So I live close to this place, and I have seen this lake as a rural lake, and then get transformed into an urban lake. Today, it's a peri-urban lake. We were still in a transformational, status. So what actually motivated me is it used to be a very beautiful lake then, back when it was a village lake. And then BDA took over and started rejuvenation. So I have been following up the progress at this lake right from the BDA rejuvenation days. And, I felt a need to be, conserving this lake because natural resources in our communities, we need to protect and preserve them. And that was a thought that I came with because I have worked a lot with environment and nature as a student in my Scouts and Guide movement time. So that was one of the exposures that motivated me. And otherwise also I come from Bangalore, which is all, green belt. We see a lot of greenery around and we're used to that. So we always like to protect and preserve, anything green in our neighborhood. So that was how I started. So the way it came about was we, started speaking to, the BDA first to see what kind of involvement can happen from citizens. And when we came to know that BDA just does development and the maintenance has to be done by BBMP, it's BBMP we went to and spoke to them, and they already had a precedent, the Putenali Lake model. So they, asked us to form a citizen group and come back to them, and they said we could kind of work in collaboration with BBMP to preserve and conserve this lake. And that's how our journey started.
That's in itself, a wonderful motivation to start. But one of the things that you mentioned is the BBMP was already open to working with citizen groups and they asked you to form a citizen group. So how easy was it for you to organize the residents and the citizenry to form this group and to have a single voice? Because we were talking just before that having a single voice is very important. Was it an easy process to set up the citizen group? How was your journey on that?
Yeah, so back then when we started, this was a mix of village and a couple of apartments were coming up. So we had a lot of village, the residents who have been here forever, the locals, So I had to talk to both the locals and ask them also to be involved in this, and also find out the, migrants who have moved into this space now. So the way we went about it is we stopped every walker at the lake and said there's a meeting happening for the welfare of the lake. So you would, be requested to attend it. So in that way, we did about a month of interfaces with the lake users, apartments, institutes around here, the local villagers. And then we fixed a date that was October 19th, 2014. And we called everybody for a meeting. And it was a generic brainstorming where we asked every person what was their vision for the lake. And there was a vision board that was filled with lot of, this is what I want from the lake. And, we also had experts like Mr. Vishwanath from Biome and Dr. Subbu from GKVK, who also kind of gave us guidance and mentoring during this brainstorming session. What was the way forward? since we had two schools of thought, one said we'll go formal, one said we will go the informal volunteering way, because they felt it was BBMP's responsibility and we are taxpayers, so we have to only be volunteers. So we started with the informal setup where we started cleanup drives every Sunday. And we started, kind of gathering momentum there by getting more people involved in this cleanup drives. Over a period of time, the cleanup drive started, giving us insight into what kind of garbage and what kind of, pollution can happen at the lake. And a lot of people felt that this is not the way forward. Until we become formal and take more responsibility, we may not be able to, do anything concrete, productive. And that's when JalPoshan was born. That was in February 2015. And, this was the motivation. I think that continuous Sunday drives made people realize that they need to do a little more than just cleanups.
That's a wonderful story of how you start off with the informal and then become a formal. But then before I ask you on this topic, going a step back, you said this lake had a mix of rural and urban, rural people and the non-rural people existing alongside. So how easy was it for us? It is a general question as outsiders in these places. How easy is it? Because most of the times the locals, as we would like to call them, always have seen how the lake has really been spoiled in front of their eyes, and they have kind of how dismayed with this entire episode, and they don't want to get involved most of the times. So how easy was it for you to interact with the older residents of this place and bring them on board, saying that we are also all, how did you bring up that unity or this understanding among people that we can work together?
So you rightly said it, there is always this rural-urban divide, so when migrants come into their space and then try to do something, there's always resistance, because they suddenly feel you are trying to tell us what is to be done with our space, and that is what we have to be mindful of. We should not immediately start claiming the space. Rather, we should try to get their confidence, build that, kind of a trust factor, where they feel, okay, there is something that is good for all of us. So we started with involving them. We started with talking to them. So there was a lot of dialogue that happened, not only with the local villagers, but also the local stakeholders like the fishermen, the grass cutters, the cattle grazers who had now, needed a change to a cattle grass cutter. So we had to do all these dialogues because we needed to find what was their connect with the lake. So certain things we realized, farmers had disconnected already because BDA had, acquired these lands. So they had disconnected from the lake because the lake was not serving any purpose for them. The cattle grazers who are now grass cutters were connected. The village community was connected to the lake to a certain extent. Dobi were connected to the lakes because they were still doing a little bit of, utility of the lake. So we just needed to understand the scenario as to how that ecosystem was working, the social interface I'm speaking about. And after that, we had to do a lot of conversations. Like, some of them who were grass cutters, they were resisting as to, you should not be having rules for us. Who are you to make rules for us? This is our space. So initially we just let them be, and then we let them observe the intent behind our work, so once they realized that everything was converging to the lake conservation and there was no vested interest or any personal, interest in the lake, that's when they slowly started, getting into our side of the thing. And now we have a very good dynamics between all the stakeholders, including the local villagers, and they do appreciate this initiative, saying that we are happy that, to be part of this, because our local common or our urban common is being protected by the community. So that is not easy, I would say, but in the meantime, it is not difficult. You just have to make the right, kind of connects and, kind of have a lot of conversations, not just make your decisions and think you know it all. That's very important.
And I think is the most important point here is make conversations and not to enforce something on them. But is that also one of the reasons why Jakkur Lake, which is very famed for being one of the least concretized lakes in Bangalore? So what was your motivation? Was this also leading to conversations? How did you come about? Because usually in Bangalore in the city that we see, everybody wants paved walkways and needs to have a children's play area with all these concretized spaces. So what made you and not go for that model of lake development, but keep it as open as as natural as possible?
So when we started this initiative in the initial brainstorming, I told you there were two groups of people. One was the activist type of a environmentalist at heart person. One was the modern city dweller who wanted various different things from the lake. So there was this kind of do nothing at the lake and protect it type of a feel. And then there was let's do boating, let's do this, let's do that, because people look the perspective of a community is very different, and they have a right to have that thought, because it comes from wherever they've grown up and whatever exposure they've had. Now we had to walk a middle way, right? So we brought the community again, and here at Jakkur, most of our decisions are made democratically. We involve the community in decision making. We discuss projects with them, ask for inputs. So we had an action plan which we did together with the community, and in that we made certain decisions. So we said, okay, now there is this people's, the lake has to be people's, and the lake has to be an environmental model also. So what is the kind of trade-offs? So one thing people didn't want was paved pathways, because it is very good for rainwater harvesting and also good health-wise, which we don't realize, but it has both. It's good for humans and nature. And certain things like no cutting trees and keeping it as wild and as natural as possible, not much manicured gardens. So these were some of the asks of the community. Yeah, there were people who also asked for the other part, like very landscaped, beautiful looking things. Then we said, how do you walk the middle path, and then that's when the community came with this concept of having a community zone and a conservation zone. So the first 1 kilometer closer to the gates on both sides is community zone. The rest 2 kilometer at the back of the lake is called conservation zone. The community landscape is little manicured and looks a little more horticultural nature, and is also being maintained by horticulture department. Whereas the conservation zone is maintained more wild with more of native plants, native trees, medicinal herbs and all that thing. And it is more dedicated to the lake dwellers. We wanted the, birds, butterflies and any urban wildlife to be, kind of using that space. So that's how, this concept came about, a balancing model. And I had also brought Harini one day for a walk here, and she also spoke a lot about social-ecological models. And that also is what we sounded with the community. And then we said the community zone will be the social component and the conservation zone will be the ecological component of the lake.
That's very much essential nowadays, because what we see is we don't see this conservation zone and the community zone. It's kind of just become a social space, which has its own advantages and disadvantages for the lake. But then I will come to this. My question that I wanted to ask you was on the informality becoming formal. So do you think that had an impact on your development of this social and ecological understanding of the lake? Because you started off as an informal system, then became formal. So do you think that had an impact on your understanding of the social and the ecological space of the lake, or?
No, formalizing only had the advantages of being able to get into action. See, because the moment we started formalizing, became a trust, we could get funds, we could do legally paperwork was able to do, we could have an MOU with the BBMP, adopt the lake, so we could get into action mode. If you were an informal organization, then we had to move on with only cleanup drives and activities like that, because we would not be able to take more ownership than that. So that was a shift. And yes, I would say because we formed and became a citizen group officially, people started realizing there is an entity here. There is a citizen body and we can be part of it. So if it was an informal thing, maybe they would not have that much of a connect. Now they all think that there is somewhere they can go and connect with. So that helped us have a kind of a converging point for the community. So everybody knew there was JalPoshan and you can go there and be part of conservation. So that helped, but not a socio-ecological concept, because that evolved over a period of time. And yes, there was a lot of awareness creation and other activities that we had to do, because there were people always questioning us, why doesn't it look like a Sankey tank? Why this is not happening? Why that lake we don't have it? Why our MLA is not doing any development at the lake? So to even say that, we are very happy our MLA is not doing it and is with us and is on the same page and supporting us, was a very difficult thought for people, because for them everything concrete is development and everything that isn't, is nothing is being done. So they were thinking nothing is being done. Today, everybody appreciates that our lake looks different from the rest of the ones in the cities, because now they value it. They understand the significance of a green space in a city like Bangalore, which has become so concretized. The temperatures have gone up so high. At the lake, we still have a 2 to 3 degree less temperature because of the hongays and so much of native trees around. So I think now they've started realizing it. So it evolved over a period of time, I would say. We have a lot more work because the community grows, new people come, they come with the same thought of urban development, and we have to keep passing that thoughts to them. But it's happening, and today we have more ambassadors because everybody walks at the lake, understands why we have done what we have done, and they themselves will educate others as to why certain things are not happening at the lake. So it's become very easy to kind of convince people.
That I think is something that a lot more people need to start doing, honestly. But that also brings me to my next question, which I wanted to ask you was, have you seen a change in not just the value? Of course, you spoke of the value already, but then in the way people are more participative, or have they become more participatory in nature? Is there more involvement over the years? So have you seen a change in that, and how and what would you attribute that change to?
So, I would say the first thing is because, we started thinking about different ways of engaging people. Like, we have a Shramadan happening every Saturday between 7:30 and 9:30, where individuals, education institutes, and, NSS, NCC, corporate employees, everybody's, kind of invited to participate. Then there's a Jal Tarang program, which is meant for a social connect with the community. Like, it's a cultural based connect to the lake. So people come here to watch art performances, they come to participate in street games, maybe Rangoli competitions or something like that, where they don't need a very environmental mindset, but they're coming for a very different reason. Once they come here, they will fall in love with the lake and feel that ownership and that we need to do something. And then there's a Nature's Gurukul program, which is very much dedicated to the environmental aspects. So it is about an education and awareness creation. We do a lot of internship projects and lot of field trips and other things for schools and educational institutes. So these three programs have kind of helped us connect with a lot of people, and participation has increased over a period of time because those communities come for those particular causes. So it is, a community needs to plan interfaces with the lake. The objective is ownership. So finally, I walk at the lake, this is my lake. I planted one tree, that is my plant. That kind of ownership. The moment that comes, you know that they won't disconnect because there is some stakes that they have in the lake. I have sweated it out at the Shramadan, so now I cannot back out. So they become not only ownership, they become so possessive sometimes that they're even ready to fight for the lake if something goes wrong. So that comes naturally. You don't enforce it on them. That happens by constant engagement at the lake. So as a community initiative, we need to provide that constant opportunities for people to come, experience and connect with the lake. And the lake does the rest of the job. We just need to believe in the charisma of the lake.
That's, I think, a lot of activities that you do and to engage citizens. But one last question before I come to the end would be that one of the things that I see is a lot of the lake groups are complaining that, there's a good set of people that work, and once they're gone, then there's no new, in the sense it starts from zero, or it has to, there's no handing over of knowledge, there's no knowledge transfer that happens. So how would you say, because I know JalPoshan has been very different in this sense, and as you've been talking is also that you've involved a citizen. How exactly do you see that there's a difference between an organization such as JalPoshan, where you're involving the communities and there's some kind of second rung of leadership that's being built versus the others? So what would be your mantra in terms of helping these groups where they don't know, or they find they're struggling hard to ensure that people are more involved, and how do you pass on that knowledge?
Yeah, so there are two things that we came up with to make this a sustainable effort. One was we started having a lake manager. So we hired a lake manager with the passion for environment. They may not have been from an environmental background. So we had a series of architects, some electrical engineers, some design students who worked for a year or so in between their careers or educational transit, and they brought a lot of system because they started systematizing things, started streamlining things, started having a better connect with the community through all the social media. So they established a lot of these because they were also very creative and very enthusiastic about doing new things at the lake. So that has helped us because there is one single point contact for the community to converge. So whoever had anything to say would call them and connect with them. So they always felt there is a representative of a community who can do that job for us. Like today there's a problem at the lake, will you resolve it? And they would resolve it and put it in the group saying that it has been resolved. So they become a single point connect. Whereas, people like us who already have a job and are working, because of the passion that we have, we may not be available 24/7, but these kids are there available and that helps. So one is a point of convergence. It could be a volunteer or it could be a paid lake manager, but a point of convergence, a face for the action group. And the second one, that the initiative we've already started, is a documentation process. So we are trying to now see how we can document our entire journey with standard operating procedures for maintenance, conducting events and all that, which also will encapsulate our ideologies and principles, because the next generation should know what was it, like the conservation zone and community zone I spoke to. That was a conscious decision, so they should know about it. So all this knowledge that has been over the period of a decade, whatever has happened at the lake, we would like to document it in various forms. So we're going for some dashboard format, some audio walks, some coffee table book. We are going for different modes of capturing this knowledge, and a little bit of a technical spec or a standard operating procedure kind of a thing that would be a ready reckoner for the next generation to just pick up and say, oh, this is it, and they have always this opportunity to do it better, right? So they can go for the next version and they can put in their own creativity and innovation and even tech, because with time we will evolve in that area also. But there will be a base document that will guide them so that there's no reinventing of the wheel, and that should not be the demotivating factor. Oh, there's a lot of hard work. They should feel that, oh, it's easy. Or somebody has already done it. It is there in the book. I just need to follow it and go ahead. And the Nature's Gurukul program, because we bring in a lot of interns. They like to continue. Some of them are showing interest in becoming the next line of, taking care of the lake. So I think it is happening. It's a slow process, but there is a lot of energy in the younger generation, and it's being converged into the lake because of the various programs. So they've already realized this is the need of the hour, and we have a role. That we have made them feel every time they come to the lake. That message goes continuously, and a couple of them have shown interest and they are taking interest. So at some point of time, like currently, I don't take a very active role. I send people to do things because then that is how they will also take interest. So there are volunteers for every group. Somebody is taking care of compost, somebody taking care of the community garden. So we are trying to decentralize things and not keep it with a set of people, so that they don't feel the responsibilities of that person. They feel that responsibility of the entire community, and that is slowly working. So that is how we are preparing. I think we need a couple of more years to get there, but we have started our journey towards sustaining of this effort of conservation.
That sounds like a wonderful start of the journey. But that's a wonderful start of the journey. But I think it's time to ask my last question. Would be, if you had to give 3 takeaways to a layperson like who's just starting to work on the lake, what would be those 3 key takeaway points that you would like to tell them?
So if somebody is starting a community initiative, the first thing I would say is involve every person in the community, whichever way, the stakeholders. So make sure that they're all part, including the governing agencies, the corporates, the scientific organizations, and the livelihood dependency people. So involve all of them. Stakeholder partnership is the essence of a successful community initiative. And the second is, do a lot of awareness programs and community connects to get citizen participation. That is very, very important, that you have every citizen on board. So here we tell them that, if you're living in a 10-kilometer radius, you're by default a JalPoshan. It's not a choice, it's your fundamental duty. You have to execute it. So it's not like a club membership where you want, if you want, you will join. So every walker is aware that they can participate, and sometimes you forcefully make them do. Like at least water 5 plants, So this kind of an involvement which you get into the community and connect them to the lake. And the third is not to be attached to the fame and name of what comes, it follows automatically. But if you're working for it, sometimes the community feels disconnected because it is one person who's being showcased as the face of the initiative. So you have to ensure all the time that it's a community that gets credit for it, and not that one or two people who've been heading or driving that initiative, because any initiative has to be driven. That is a fact. But that, always wanting to be that face may be the main reason for a disconnect from the community. So the moment you say it's all about us and there is no I in this, I think everybody wants to be with you.
Those are wonderful takeaways for people to start believing in it. And I really hope that I can read the documentation that you come up with. I'm looking forward to it. And thank you so much for joining me today on this podcast at this location of Jakkur Lake. It's a wonderful place. So I would really ask people to come visit more and participate in all the activities of JalPoshan. And thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much for joining me here today.
Thank you. It was my pleasure to be part of this.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of Common Sense. Do follow us on our next episodes on podcast Azim Premji University, and follow us on YouTube and Spotify.